Choices and options. Isn't life just all about the choices we make and the options that we have? I guess that the options that we're able to identify is going to determine the choices that we make. The choices that we make tend to have an emotional consequence and an outcome and all that kind of thing. So what I'm saying here is if we're going to be making some decisions or taking some choices in life, we want to have a framework for understanding the difference between wise decisions, mature, grounded decisions, and perhaps decisions or choices that might steal us or steal from us or rob us of life, fulfillment, progress, growth, all these sorts of things. So in this video, I want to present you with one of my signature teachings, referred to as the choices of maturity and character. And it's how it is that we can discern where people are at in life, but we can also relate this framework to ourselves, all right, as a basis for our own decision-making endeavours. Are you with me? So there's a resource that you can download in the additional materials section of this video. A few questions you might want to reflect upon once this video is wrapped up. So I'm going to rattle through them, and I'm just hoping that you relate these ideas to yourself, all right? There are some people who go through life making completely reckless decisions for a living, it seems, all right? Some of these people, believe it or not, seem to find themselves in positions of authority and influence, like politicians and so on and so forth. And here's the thing. We can go through life complaining about the decisions and the choices that other people are making, or we can choose to do something about it. All right, there's no point in complaining about other people's choices and decisions if we ourselves aren't choosing or deciding to do too much. But I guess that's going to be determined by how responsible we are, isn't it? Choices of maturity and character. Choices of maturity and character are always going to be responsible ones by nature. Irresponsible people tend to focus on the actions and the outcomes of other people. Responsible people tend to focus on the actions and the outcomes of themselves because they fundamentally understand that the only person that I can take responsibility for in this life is me. I mean, I can devote the rest of my life to tearing other people down and pointing out other people's flaws and imperfections, but what's that ancient proverb? Before you go pointing out the speck of dust in your neighbour's eye, just make sure that you've removed that boulder that was kind of lodged in your own. Sometimes it's very, very easy to focus on the flaws and the imperfections of other people, and that becomes a bit of an avoidance strategy for us in terms of not taking responsibility for our own flaws and imperfections and warped ways of thinking, cognitive dysfunctions, and so on and so forth. So obviously a choice of maturity and character is one of responsibility. I will take responsibility for myself. I will take responsibility for my choices, for my actions, for my outcomes, for my consequences. No one else in this world makes me feel anything because I'm in control of how I process information, situations, circumstances. That means that I alone determine how I feel on a day-to-day basis. All right? Now that's obviously a statement that you're going to find from a person who's taken full responsibility for their life. A person who is not willing to take responsibility for their life, they will say something more along the lines of, oh, it's my mum and dad's fault why my life is the way that it is. Society's out to get me. God's out to get me. God's like a nasty old man with his little wizard finger pointing it down on me. And, it's my ex-husband's fault and my ex-wife's fault and my children's fault and it's my next-door neighbour's fault and it's my cat's fault and the next-door neighbour's dog's fault why my life is the way that it is. The mark of irresponsibility, that drone, is quite tiring, isn't it? Listening to this kind of stuff. And that really operates out of this place of arrogance and pride. I mean, we think sometimes in life that arrogance and pride, people who are really proud people, arrogance is kind of like aggressive in some way, but it's not. All right, arrogance and pride spawns out of this mindset. The way in which I see things is the way that things are. The complete opposite of humility and honesty. Humility. You know what? I'm flawed in my thinking. I don't have it all together. I'm making some pretty poor choices right now that are bringing the consequences and the results into my life that I'm experiencing. I am responsible for my life. No one else is. Most people go through life with this place of entitlement, don't they? Well, that's arrogance and pride. I'm entitled to feel a certain way. The governments owe me something. Societies owe me something. My employer should take responsibility for me, for my life. Irresponsibility, arrogance and pride. And what happens when people don't get what they want when they're operating out of a place of irresponsibility? Anger and frustration. Time for that stop card, my friend. All right, mark of immaturity and lack of character. All right, if you want to decide whether a person's mature or immature, look at how easily they are angered. If a person is easily angered, well, it's they're not in control of themselves. They're not self-regulating particularly well. Now, I'm kind of preaching as the converted here, right? Going back to my 20s. I had a real problem with my temper. I really, really did. I apply this stuff to myself. I have to, because I'm married now. I'm looking forward to the day where me and Karen are planning starting a family and all this kind of thing. And I will not carry the habits of my 20s or even early 30s into fatherhood, into parenthood. That would be completely irresponsible and thoughtless of me. Why? Because anything that I allow moving forward into my future, I'll be allowing moving forward into my future and my children's and my marriage and the other relationships that I develop moving forward. So I want to develop patience, right? Patience, which kind of contradicts many of society's ways today. We want instant gratification. We want what we want and we want it right now. And if I don't get what I want within 5 minutes, I'm anxious, I'm stressed, I'm depressed, or I'm angry, and so on and so forth. It's just a responsibility. Let's look at some of today's political leaders. All right, never mind what we believe, never mind what theologies and what ideologies we're operating out of. Let's look at men and women on the world stage, leaders of nations. All right, I'm going to boldly say that, see, in marriage is kind of like a fight, and it is. You've got to fight for connection in a marriage. And in the same way, if you're in business, if you've got a business partner, you've got to fight to remain connected with your business partner. Over the years, I think I mentioned Julian, my business partner, and he's kind of like my best friend, Julian. I've had to fight for connection over the years with Julian. Why? Because whilst we're so alike on so many levels, we're also very, very different on so many levels. So we've got to fight to remain connected because our minds process information two totally different ways. I am kind of big thinker, Julian is detailed thinker, so sometimes when we speak, it's kind of like we're speaking two different languages. So we've got to fight for unity. And if we're not fighting for unity, then we're choosing disunity. We're either fighting and choosing connection, or we're letting disconnection happen. So let's revisit the political leaders. All right, here in the UK, we've got Brexit going on. Brexit has come about in response to the votes of pretty much, a large percentage of an entire nation who say, yes, we're better off being separated and apart from Europe. All right, the European Union that was set up after World War II because a bunch of really wise men and women said, well, World War II's just happened. Europe's gone to war within itself because there was no alliance. There was no sense of unity between nations. So let's set up the European Union to prevent a World War III from happening. And people seriously think, and history books reckon, that we learn lessons from the past. Well, here we are. 70 years after World War II, and we've got the United Kingdom. We don't need a European Union. We have obviously grown. We're so much smarter than what we were 70 years ago. World War III will never happen because we are happy right now. And then we've got Scotland, and the great Scottish nation says, and we want independence. We want to break free from the United Kingdom, and oh my goodness. And let's have a look at the United States of America. All right. Do we have any political leaders who are more pro-disunity or more pro-unity? Well, whether there are or whether there aren't, what I'm going to say is that it requires substance and character to really fight for unity and connection. It is a hell of a lot easier, all right, to let a marriage fall apart than what it takes to actually fight for one. And in the same way, political alliance, all right? It requires a lot more effort, a lot more groundedness, self-awareness, unconditional acceptance. Could you imagine what would happen on the world stage if political leaders from every single nation just got together, not for the purpose of being right or being the superpower or the global, whatever, but instead just, okay, listen, we are operating from, very different ideologies, very different historical backgrounds, we've got very different cultures. Let us actually see if we can understand each other here. If we understand each other, maybe we can work more effectively together. Well, that would be the mark of maturity and character. But we very rarely see that on the global stage. So all wars start from within when people are more pro disunity than unity. My friend, it's a choice of maturity and character. It will tell you a lot about a person. It'll tell you a lot about a man, a lot about a woman. If they are quick to walk away and disregard a marriage or a relationship, it's a character issue. All right, it's a character issue. We can work with people in life as CBT practitioners who are taking responsibility for themselves, but a person who isn't taking responsibility for themselves yet, we might find a little bit challenging. So here's the thing: having a desire to grow and develop is a choice of maturity and character. All right, why? What's the alternative? Well, most people just want to feel happy and feel gratified. And that's why self-help is so common throughout the world. And this is why, so many alternative whacked out therapies exist today. Cuddle therapy. You've got therapeutic clowning, and you've got all sorts of stuff going on. And people dress up and do all this abstract, whacked out stuff. And you've got healing, mystical energy healing and things like this. And why is this stuff so popular? Because it fuels people's need for instant gratification. I want to feel happy and I want to feel happy right now. Make me feel happy, oh therapist. Take away my nasty feelings, because I'm not yet at a stage of my development or maturity where I'm ready to grow and actually develop myself. It's going to be so much easier if you can just make me feel nice. All right? And if this seems like I'm being a little bit overdramatic, it's because this is how people actually conduct themselves in life. I'm being straight with you here, friend. All right, if you're finding any of this stuff confrontational or challenging, own it. All right, check yourself, amend yourself before you wreck yourself or someone else. All right, check me out. I could be like a pimping rock star right now, couldn't I? I've got a desire to grow and develop, and this is what gives me the authority and the insights that I'm sharing with you throughout the course. There's no opinions here. This is all fact-based. I've come to learn this stuff through experience over the last decade. And to be honest with you, this is what kind of gives me faith for the future. I'm just reflecting now upon some of the conversations I've had with Karen throughout this section of the course. I understand that anxiety is a fear-based emotion. Right? Anxiety is born out of a negative expectation or a fear of something that's going to happen in the future. All right? Well, what is the opposite of fear? It's faith. All right? People think that faith is some sort of religious. What faith are you? What faith? Well, I'm of the Buddhist faith. I'm of the Christian faith. I'm of the Protestant faith. I'm of the atheist faith. Nonsense. All right? Faith's not a belief. It's an attitude. It's an outlook towards life. It's a choice of maturity and character to actually step out and exercise our faith. Karen, for example, in the context of her issue, uncertainty. Uncertainty is a bad thing. Well, if we can now relate to uncertainty differently and say, okay, uncertainty could actually be a good thing. It could actually provide us with opportunity for bigger, brighter days in the future. Well, this means that we're actually going to have to act and behave and be differently in faith for a bigger, better, brighter future. Because if we're not applying that which we're learning, we're just going to remain the same. That's why I kind of provoked Karen in some of her statements. Oh, well, I just see and I think and I understand now. Well, that's fine, growing and understanding. It's okay thinking differently. It's absolutely fine developing and expanding upon your theology. But if this doesn't equate to you actually behaving differently or modifying a habit that you have in your life, then my friend, nothing's changed. There is no changing in life. This isn't a Kane Ramsey saying. This is a Master Yoda saying, by the way. There is no changing. There is only changed or hasn't changed or something like that, all right? So you're not going through a process of changing. You're either changed or you've not changed. You might say, but I'm changing in my thinking. Well, that's fantastic. But changing in your thinking doesn't necessarily mean that you've changed. You can change in your thinking. In fact, you can completely transform your thinking whilst changing nothing about your life. You're only going to change something about your outcomes when you change something that you do, or you change how you are, or you modify an attitude and then, operate out of this in the context of all of your relationships moving forward. But to change requires faith. You're not going to change if you're operating out of a place of fear. It's a choice of mature character. Faith for the future, or you're in fear of the future. If you're in fear of the future, you're going to be experiencing panic, stress, angst, apprehension, so on and so forth. All right? We're not here to make nasty feelings go away. We're here to help people grow the hell up, to mature in life, to grow out of the limiting ways that they've learned to be and exist throughout their younger years. Life is a progressive process. The process of maturation isn't about growing in responsibility for ourselves. It's for owning our stuff. It's for taking responsibility how our choices, how our attitudes, our actions, our habits, our behaviours are actually influencing the outcomes that we're experiencing in life. If we're not owning the stuff, then we're going to be waiting for someone else to own it. And of course, if we're waiting for someone else to own our stuff, of course we're going to be fearful of the future. Why? Well, I've never been able to manage my stuff in the future, which means I'm never going to be able to manage my stuff. I just don't know because I'm still quite disempowered because I haven't yet taken responsibility for myself. Big ideas, friends, all right? Someone's going to be the bearer of bad news in your life. So, okay. If we have faith for the future, if we're deciding to get our big boys and big girls pants on, all right, we're going to be slightly more decisive and progress-driven in our lives. We're never going to be willing just to settle for the status quo. Oh, well, I'm just not sure if anything's going to change. I just don't know if I want to make a decision. I'm just going to remain in a place of double-mindedness. In fact, I might just think about changing something for the next couple of years, but never actually get round to changing, all right? Some people think a better game than that which they play. Means we've actually got to become decisive. We've got to become more grounded in making decisions. Regardless of whether these decisions that we make result in us experiencing more of the outcomes that we want to experience in life or not, it doesn't make any difference. All right? Growing in maturity is growing in decisiveness. Growing in decisiveness is a reflection of us operating out of faith for the future rather than fear. We've sometimes just got to go against the grain, our own grain. So if you want to identify an immature person in life, an irresponsible person, it's a person who changes nothing, who stays in the comfort zone, who never changes. They stay in the same dead-end job for an entire lifetime, in a little, close-knit circle of friends. They dress the same way, they keep their hair the same, everything's the same. What are you having for breakfast today, Gertrude? Oh, same as yesterday. Well, there's a surprise. All right, why? Because people are safety-driven and double-minded in all of their ways. Because they're full of fear for the future. They have little faith. And even if they have a little bit of faith, they're certainly not willing to make any decisions and do anything about it. Strive for more. And we're not talking about striving for more being a bad thing, i.e. I'm not content or grateful for what I have. But life is progressive. Life is about stepping outside the comfort zone. People say, but I'm just content with what I have. Nice one. And how influential are you actually being? Because I don't know about you, but see, going back 6 or 7 years ago, when I was absolutely broke, living in like a little pokey, smelly one-bedroom flat in this little village in Fife here in Scotland with mushrooms growing out the windows. Well, it wasn't that bad, but it was pretty close to being that bad. It wasn't like I had too avid a following. It wasn't like there was people queuing up at my door saying, okay, and Ramsey, teach me how to get the outcomes that you have in life. Oh no, I wasn't experiencing that whatsoever. All right, but these days, I'm not blowing my trumpet here, but, being relatively established on the world stage, teaching this stuff, rather than just hiding away in a university, pouring out some academic waffle, right? Being bold enough to put my neck on the line and share these ideas with the world for peanuts, for next to nothing. I've got this crazy idea. Call me a fool. I've got a crazy idea that people might take some of these ideas, actually put them into practice, and go on to share them with other people who will then put them into practice. And then, who knows, we end up developing a community of people who go on to transform the modern world. My goodness. We might even spawn a few slightly more mature politicians and religious leaders out the process. Who knows? We might end up with a couple of parents who are a bit more responsible than what their parents were. Or a few managers or leaders who are a bit more responsible and compassionate for people than perhaps what they were in the decades gone past. Who knows? We might improve the world through this stuff, but we might not. Guess that's going to be determined by you and your willingness to take responsibility for yourself and start making some decisions to grow and develop, to own your own stuff. But I guess the decision lies in you. And the same as the decision lies to me. Same way. We're going to live a life that's governed either way, all right? We're going to be governed by the powers that be. We're going to be governed by other people's rules, or we're going to be governed by facts that people make rules, and in the same way that people make rules, people can break rules. There's actually no rules that we need to live by in life. There's laws of the land, right? It's good to live by those ones. We might end up getting ourselves in trouble. But in terms of keeping the rules, no, there's none. No rules that need to be kept. All rules, in fact, should be challenged. Why? So we can expand them. We can expand them. But here's the thing. Many people, most people, will be fueled by feelings. I'm scared. I don't want to step outside the box. I don't want to step outside the comfort zone. In fact, it's far easier for me just to remain the same as what I've always been. And here's the one thing, this is guaranteed. If we always do what we've always done, in the same way that we've always done those things, we'd be fools to expect any more for our future than what we've ever had in the past. And that's one of those things. I share all of this with you. More than anything else, as a CBT practitioner, as a human being, as a man, as a woman, whatever, to give you hope, all right, that nothing needs to remain the same. You're only ever one decision away from transforming absolutely everything about your life. And in the same way that you're only ever one step away or one decision away from transforming everything about your own life, you're only ever one conversation away from changing absolutely everything about someone else's life. Doesn't the thought of that just make life seem a bit more exciting, a bit more appealing, But whether you do or whether you don't, it's all going to be determined by the decisions that you make or don't make. My friend, you get to choose how you respond to this video. Like, dislike, accept, reject. The only person who's going to be impacted by the decisions that you make, my friend, is you. All right? So make sure, if you are going to make some decisions, that they're choices of maturity and character. Listen, if you want a wee bit of help, you want to just investigate some of these ideas in a bit more depth, then visit the additional materials section, download the workbook. There's a few self-reflection questions in there that I'm hoping might just solidify a few realizations that you've arrived at throughout this video and the remainder of the section that's just gone by. So I hope you found this idea helpful. I'm sharing these things with you to build you up, not tear you down, so that moving forward as a cognitive behavioural therapist practitioner, as a human being, as a mum, as a dad, as a leader, as a manager, as a teacher, whatever, you become far more influential, and you are more influential because you're far more aware, not just of yourself, but also of other people. You with me? Is this good stuff? Is this helpful? I hope so. We'll wrap this video up for now, and I'll see you again in the next.